Thank you for listening to the One Mind Dharma podcast. I'm Matthew Sokolov. And to learn more about us, you can visit oneminddharma.com. For individual sessions, courses, free meditation challenge, you can visit themindfulcounselor.me. And this is actually the first of a series on mindfulness for beginners. I've had a lot of beginners in my practice since the pandemic, in the last 4 or 5 years. And I wanted to offer kind of a series of talks and meditations specifically aimed at beginners and people new to practice. I do think that if you have some experience, these topics can, of course, still be useful. And today I want to answer the question, which seems like a simple one, of what is mindfulness? And I'll talk a little bit about the roots of mindfulness as well as the more secular practices of mindfulness. But I think it's a word that is used colloquially a little bit differently than what it actually means when it comes to the meditation path. So we'll start from the beginning. Mindfulness is obviously an English word. It comes from, it's translated from the Pali word, sati. And Pali was the language of the Buddha's time. It's kind of was the common vernacular, whereas Sanskrit, which many more people seem to have heard of, was the more formal kind of stationary form. You can almost think of, in a way, of Sanskrit as like the more like poetic written form, whereas on the street, Pali is what was spoken, and it evolved and changed. And the word sati itself, that we translate as mindfulness, I think is kind of where one of the big first problems comes in. The word shares a root with, or comes from the root word to remember or recognize. There's a great quote, I think it's Sharon Salzberg, who says, "Mindfulness isn't difficult, we just need to remember to do it," which kind of points to this. We think of mindfulness as this just simply awareness or being present. And to be fair, I think that that is a huge component of mindfulness. Requires us to be present. But there's also a piece of recognizing or remembering, of recognizing exactly what's happening and how it's serving us. So, in my opinion and experience, and both studying Buddhist teachings and more secular programs like MBSR, mindfulness really has two components. One is being present with whatever's going on and investigating it or experiencing it. And number two, a recognition of how it serves us or serves others. And I'll give an example. We might be mindful in a moment that we're experiencing anger. And this can come in so many forms, but let's just say we're mindful that we're experiencing anger. We know we're experiencing anger. We recognize it as anger. We feel it, we're present with it. With mindfulness, we also have this second piece of remembering or recognizing that if we lash out with our anger, it's going to cause harm to ourselves and to others. And ideally, we don't do it. Mindfulness is also recognizing how the anger arose. So, not just that anger is present, but kind of what gave rise to the anger. Maybe somebody said something that hurt us and it felt unpleasant. And rather than be with the unpleasantness or hurt, the mind kind of responds with anger as a form of not experiencing it. So mindfulness isn't just, oh, knowing I'm angry and that's mindfulness. There's also the piece of how did we get here and where do we go from here? Mindfulness is a calling to be present, but not just in any specific way. Like, I think that we can get caught on mindfulness of the breathing or mindfulness of our emotional states. But I think it's important to recognize that mindfulness is not dependent on the object. Mindfulness doesn't need any object or anything. It's a quality of mind or of attention. So we can be mindful of anything. We can be mindful of doing the dishes, as Thich Nhat Hanh often encourages. We can be mindful of the breath. We can be mindful of an emotion. We can be mindful of our body moving as we do walking meditation. A lot of the traditional teachings on mindfulness stem from the four foundations of mindfulness practice, which I'll link in the show notes. And if you're new to the podcast or listening, the show notes can be found at onemindharma.com. And you just click on podcast and the episode, and there's all the notes in there and things I reference. The foundations of mindfulness are the four kind of ways that we establish mindfulness: mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of feeling tones. So, how something lands, is it pleasant or unpleasant or neutral? Mindfulness of the mental states. These aren't individual thoughts, but we can be mindful of individual thoughts, of course, as well. But mindful of the mental state, the kind of overarching flavor of the mind. And mindfulness of the dhammas, mindfulness of kind of this, that second piece I offered of what caused this state, what do we do with it, how do we respond in a way that doesn't create more suffering. So, at its core, mindfulness really comes from these teachings of the Buddha of establishing it in these different ways. And at the same time, we can be mindful of anything. I know that a lot of therapists and counselors use mindfulness based practices. You might see this in MBSR, mindfulness based cognitive behavioral therapy. And there's so many benefits of mindfulness. I wrote a post years ago on One Mind Dharma. I'll link it in the show notes on the benefits of mindfulness and research being done. And that was probably 10 years ago I wrote that post, and now there's more research looking at different things. But mindfulness really allows us, the goal in the Buddhist path is to allow us to see experience more clearly, to see specifically the three marks of existence: the impermanent nature of things, whether it's thoughts or feelings or sounds, our own bodies, the impermanent nature, the nature of dukkha or suffering, and that's largely due to our clinging to them, right? We cling to our thoughts or cling to our joy or cling to our bodies. And then no self, which is a topic all on its own. But the goal of mindfulness, or the purpose in the Buddhist path, is to build insight into kind of the true nature of experience. And we can see this. I've seen it so clearly in my life in kind of the more pragmatic side, that as I practice mindfulness and cultivate this quality in meditation, I find that certain difficulties or behaviors or habits suddenly become more clear of why they're happening and why I'm having a tough time with them. And it also becomes more clear how I might respond differently. Mindfulness has given me the opportunity to choose how I respond more often rather than just going along for the ride. In mindfulness practice, we often don't have like a white light insight moment. It's just over and over again, it's a quality that we're cultivating. And it takes time and it takes energy, it takes consistency. But with some patience and with this consistency, what happens is we are able to see things a little bit more clearly, gain a little bit of insight into what exactly is going on. And sometimes we do have insight moments or kind of white light moments. I've definitely had moments especially on meditation retreats or at monasteries, where I truly, deeply know and see something clearly. And it is a bit of a like aha moment. But we don't always get that. And the practice doesn't rely on that. I think when we cultivate mindfulness through meditation, we can be looking for something to happen, some change or some growth. And it's good to have goals or orientation, but we also can't expect one period of mindfulness to totally change our experience or to have a white light experience in every meditation. It's a gradual cultivation. Mindfulness is an important factor, but it's just one factor in the Buddhist Noble Eightfold Path. There's other factors to cultivate. And I actually, as of recording this, just gave a series of talks on the Noble Eightfold Path that I highly recommend checking out, because there's lots of other things that we're called to cultivate, like wise action and wise speech. But mindfulness is this quality that when we cultivate, it does serve kind of every other aspect of our lives, every other factor of the Noble Eightfold Path. We also think of mindfulness as something that's cultivated in meditation. And with reason, that is the main way that we really cultivate it. But we can also cultivate mindfulness in our daily lives. There's plenty of ways, and I'll give a talk in this series on that, as well as we have a post on the website. There are plenty of ways that we can work to cultivate mindfulness off the cushion, to come back to the present moment, to tune into experience. It doesn't matter what you're doing, you can always tune into what the experience is like for you. And the last thing I want to say, and I've touched on it, is that this is a training. I have a lot of students that come to me and say, I've tried meditating, I've tried practicing mindfulness, and I just can't. It's like, well, you tried one meditation and it was a struggle. Of course. I meditate at least once a day, and sometimes I have meditations that are just a struggle the entire way through. Doesn't mean anything's wrong with you. Doesn't mean necessarily that you can't meditate. We should remember that it's a training and it takes time. I always use the example of going to the gym, that you wouldn't go to the gym and try to pick up the 300-kilo weight and deadlift it and go, "Oh, I can't lift that big heavy weight up. I can't go to the gym." No, you'd start with some smaller weights. You'd work your way up. Give yourself a little bit of patience as you practice mindfulness. Recognize that it's a training, that it takes time, it takes consistency, it takes effort and energy. As we cultivate mindfulness more and more, it does become easier, is my experience. If you have any questions about mindfulness specifically, or something that you want me to cover, please email me at matthew@oneminddharma.com. And I'll leave you with those thoughts for today.